The movie Downfall, or Der Untergang as it's called in German, is one of my favourite films of all time. I first saw it when it came out on DVD and I was totally taken by the film. It's masterfully done in every way. You feel like you're in Berlin at the end of World War II while you're watching, and the amazing performance by Bruno Ganz, who played Hitler, is also memorising to watch. This movie is also well known from the YouTube parodies, which are really funny. Fortunately, I saw the film before the parodies were around, so my viewing of the film wasn't ruined in thinking of this silly antics Hitler and the gang get up to. Years later, I discovered that there was an extended cut released on German television that has over 30 minutes of additional footage. It is not very well known outside of Germany. After watching it, I think that the longer scenes benefit the story and make the film even better than the original cut, which was nearly perfect anyway. I'll now do a detailed review of the extended edition and all the added alternative scenes as to why it is better. The first extended scene is Eva Braun making a cake for Hitler's birthday. The cook tells Eva that Hitler already eats enough fat foods. When Frau Junge walks in and starts to chat with Eva, Eva mentions that it's good that you're around so the Fuhrer can talk to you, as he's tired of listening to his generals that just give him bad news. Junge mentions that the Russians are shelling at the center of Berlin and there is a time to be worried. The next added scene is in the mat room, after Hitler demands that Jodl move Wink's army from the Elbe to help out Berlin. Hitler confesses to his generals that he's decided to stay in Berlin. His generals start to immediately talk him out of this decision, but he states that he cannot let these uncultured beasts conquer Europe, and he is the last of the bulwark of letting these dangers in, and that the battle for Berlin will be the destiny of Germany and its people. Goebbels further states that only in Berlin can a worldwide success be achieved. Should death happen to the Fuhrer, it has to be in the capital. In no other way does he owe it to the world historic rank. This new footage replaces an alternative scene cut from the theatrical cut, which had Goebbels telling everyone that the Western Allies will realize that only we can stop the Bolsheviks, and all we have to do is hold off the Asiatic hordes for a few more days, then we can make a deal with the Americans. Peter's parents get far more story in the longer version. This scene shows them arguing about Peter going off fighting. The mother tells the father, Wilhelm, how could she stop her son from fighting? The father mentions how could he stop his son from fighting as he's only got one arm. The mother talks on about at least her husband and her son got to fight, while all she could do is wait in terror as the bombs were dropping in Berlin. She says that the Fuhrer needed young boys to fight. The father responds back that the Fuhrer has gone mad if he wants kids to go out and fight over 2 million Russian soldiers. While arguing, Peter comes and hears what his parents are arguing about. He shouts out to his father that he's a coward and he runs off. The father tries to stop his son, but with no avail. The next new scene is seeing Welding sitting at the table longer, waiting to see Hitler. Bergdorf, Krebs, and Bormann are sitting there drunk. Bergdorf is drunkenly singing, and towards the end he starts to sing in English. The other two guys applaud him. Grada asks Junge if they would be able to buy bread like the old times. After Eva Braun, Gerda, and Junge head back in the bunker, they sit next to Hitler on the couch. Eva Braun asks Hitler if he knows who owns those beautiful statues out there, and that if he beats the Russians out of Berlin, he can buy them for her garden. He responds saying he doesn't know who owns those statues, and that they are state property, and that he can't just take them. Eva responds by saying surely people would mind after you beat the Russians out of Berlin, no one would notice. He smiles at her and says female logic, and then they go on and talk about more trivial things. I really like this extension as it shows more of Hitler's lighter side away from his generals. A really graphic scene of Schenker with the doctor amputating a soldier's leg. Peter arrives at an underground bunker and finds his parents huddled together with other civilians. He gives them some bread he found. Peter says he has to go back to the fighting. His father tries to hold him back, and some other guy says to the father that he should go. The father gets angry with the man, telling him that he's tired of hearing his shit. The guy comes over and tells them, you could be hanged for talking so negatively about the war. Then the man notices that Wilhelm has only one arm. Another soldier comes along and breaks up the argument. When Peter goes back to the flank artillery crew and sees Inga dead, there's a new shot with him picking up the Walther P-38 pistol next to the dead bodies. After he hides from Soviet soldiers coming down the road, he bumps into another Soviet soldier. The man says to him in Russian to put the gun down. Peter, frightened, shoots him. While the soldier is dying, he says that he does not shoot kids. Peter drops the pistol and runs off. New footage in the map room with Hitler, Goebbels and the generals. Hitler goes on about how Berlin is not as bad as it seems and that they need to supplement the army divisions with civilians. Goebbels then says if they can hold back the Soviets here, the whole world would be taken aback. Hitler cuts in saying if it's true that there are rifts going back with the Allies and if their pacts break, then he could deliver a blow to the head of this insatiable Bolshevik colossus. And if he's successful in saving their capital, then the Allies will realize that there is only one man capable of stopping the Bolsheviks, and that he won't be out for glory or honor but for history. Goebbels retorts back again saying, if all goes well, perfect, but if not, Europe will become Bolshevik, and in 5 years the Führer and National Socialism will become legendary. Any criticisms that the world would have against us would be swept aside. Hitler finishes off by saying that only in Berlin here can everything be saved. Each last man must be utilized. Another one of my favorite added scenes, as it's very important as it shows that Hitler, Goebbels and some of the main leading Nazis and Germans believe that the American and British governments may change sides and fight with the Nazis and stopping the Soviets from spreading communism throughout Europe. It was really the only small hope they could cling on to for the events to change in their favour. A new scene with the Goebbels kids playing in the bunker. Next is a Navy officer and an Army officer talking to Keitel and Krebs. The Navy officer says that Grand Admiral Dönitz will be happy to hear about the Führer is in good spirits. The Army officer mentions about Hitler's possible coming down with depression. Keitel and Krebs say the Führer is fine. The Navy officer asks Keitel about the new V-2 rockets and when they'll be fully utilized. Keitel responds by saying that he can't give the information as it's top secret. The Navy man understands. At that point, they are disrupted when one of the Goebbels' children runs into Krebs. He shrugs it off. Frau Junger apologizes and tells the kids to go upstairs. Then one of Hitler's main staff comes in and tells the Field Marshal Keitel that Hitler wants to see him. New footage of Frau Junger hearing bad reports in the radio, which follows on with the communications officer gets a message from Goering. In the theatrical cut, it skips to Hitler hearing about it. The extended cut shows the radio man handing it to Frau Junger, telling her it's urgent. She quickly takes it to Bormann. He reads it and then rushes it to Hitler. Bormann's presence stands out in the extended cut a little more, as he was one of the most powerful Nazi figures. A new shot of Peter walking through the devastated city. He walks past a woman wearing a gas mask, pushing a pram. You see Speer get to meet the Goebbels kids. When Speer is finished talking to Magna Goebbels, there's an additional scene with him telling her that he'll visit her again before leaving. Before Speer visits Hitler's room, Bormann drunkenly comes up to Speer and pleads with him to get Hitler to change his mind about leaving the capital so they can get down to Berchtesgaden. As if they stay here much longer, the Bolsheviks will cut their throats. Speer acknowledges but says nothing, as I'm sure the architect wanted Hitler to die in Berlin so the war wouldn't drag on for much longer. More footage with Speer, who goes back to talk to Frau Goebbels, most likely going to try and convince her again to leave with the children. Before he can talk, Joseph Goebbels comes behind him. He just says goodbye and leaves. Additional footage with Frau Junger and the children singing. A better introduction showing Field Marshal Grime being carried in the bunker after being injured. Hitler talks to him in Anna Risch for longer, while his injuries are being taken care of. Hitler informs Grime about Goering and promotes Grime as the new Field Marshal of the Luftwaffe. I did find Grime's introduction too rushed in the theatrical cut, a little confusing. New scene of Eva Braun worries to Frau Junger about what will happen to Fegelein. Before Frau Junge stops to see Hitler, she sees the kids playing and goes into the room. The oldest daughter looks worried about staying here. The mother comes in, interrupts, and says that her oldest daughter always has been worrying with times like this. Then Frau Junge sees Eva Braun, who is very happy. She tells the secretary that she'll be getting married to Hitler. The wedding scene goes on for longer, with Frau Junge joining them. She gives a new message to Hitler. The Führer tells Kribs to walk over with him. Eva tells Frau Junge that she's happy she could make it, and that during the marriage papers signing, she almost signed her own last name, Braun, instead of using the last name Hitler. Meanwhile, Hitler asks Kribs if there's been a response from the telegram to Keitel. Kribs shrugs his head. Both of them look worried. Another scene that benefits for being longer is the German and Soviet negotiation talks. The scene starts off early with General Zhukov, who doesn't get his name mentioned in the theatrical cut, is looking at drawings of the battle. He is happy with them, and while looking through them, he gets notified that the Germans are here. Not expecting them so quickly, he gets the artist to hide in a cupboard and gets the other soldiers and makes them look like generals to impress the Germans, as his real generals are off fighting on the front. It's quite funny to watch. After Zhukov is ready, he lets them in. Zhukov mentions to Kribs that they know each other. Kribs responds that he worked at the Kremlin as an attaché for the German embassy, which explains why Kribs is good with speaking Russian. Also, after Kribs tells the Soviets that Adolf Hitler committed suicide, Zhukov said that they know this. Kribs says he's surprised to hear that. Additional dialogue, Zhukov states that Berlin must lay down its arms if they want to capitulate. When Peter goes back to his parents, there's a short new cut of him running up the stairs and shouting out that the Führer has killed himself. When the group are leaving the bunker, Gunsche asks the electrician if he's coming. He declines, saying that he's going to stay to keep the electricity going for the hospital next door. Gunsche tells him to say hello to the Russians for him. Another improvement that makes the story more fluid and better to understand is the bunker group and others trying to break out of the city. A new scene starts with Monk telling everyone that they'll split into 3 different groups and try to break through the Russian lines to get to the west. There's more extended scenes with them going through the subway and tunnel systems. Frau Junge sees an old couple eating dinner and asks them if they'd like to come. They say they don't want to leave and wish her good luck. Also, more shots of the group sneaking across the bridge. My favourite extended footage, and one that really should have stayed in the original release, is showing the Soviets finally getting into the bunker. Since so much of the movie is set in the bunker, I always wanted to see the first Soviet forces coming in. The footage starts off with the electrician who stayed behind. He's outside looking at the remains of Hitler and Eva Braun, then looks around and sees the burnt bodies of the Goebbels. He heads back downstairs, where he sees Russian women soldiers walking down the corridor. They spot him. He raises his hands, showing no threat. The lead woman comes over to him and asks in German where is Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun. He says to her that they are dead. She then asks where Eva Braun's room is. He tells her, "I'll show you." One of the Russian women is about to open a door. The electrician tells her not to go in there. The main Russian woman quickly opens the door and is shocked to see all the dead Goebbels children inside. She looks back to the electrician and he tells her to follow him. Next scene cuts to the Russian women inside Eva Braun's room having fun ransacking her clothes. There's more extensions toward the end of the film, like when Goethe does not want to walk any longer, more longer scenes of the German soldiers waiting inside the warehouse building to surrender, extra shots of the Soviet soldiers circling the group, and a long scene with Schenk trying to talk to a young officer from killing himself. The young soldier tells Schenk more about his life. From watching the making of behind the scenes, there was even more footage left out of the film. Scenes like an early intro with Goebbels giving Hitler a message about news from the horoscopes and that there will be a good turn of events coming to them. Bergdorf going on a rant to other people in the Reich Chancellery. Kribs tries to sell them down, but the man goes on about all the hundreds of thousands of soldiers' lives have been lost fighting for nothing, while all of them have been getting rich and fat from it. It's a powerful speech. The actor gives it his all. Also a shot of Frau Junger listening to this as she holds the champagne bottle. After Hitler outbursts at Jodl in the mat room, there's an additional ordering of Hitler talking to Koller, the officer who he talks to on the phone at the start of the movie. Hitler orders Koller that all Luftwaffe personnel must support Steiner's attack, and if any of the Luftwaffe force haven't complied within 5 hours, they must be executed. A scene of Fegelein being interrogated while drunk. A further extension of the negotiation scenes between Kribs and the Soviets. The artist who Zhukov hid in the cupboard collapses out due to lack of air. Some other Russian officers come in to take his body out. And I'm guessing that there must have been additional footage of Goering that was cut, as he has no lines of dialogue in the film. All he does is look at his watch. Overall, the extended cut of Downfall makes the movie even greater and easier to understand, with better transitional scenes and more development with other people's stories. It'd be great if Constantine could release an extended cut on Blu-ray and DVD with English subtitles in the future, and with all the deleted footage as special features, or even a longer cut of the film. The history of all the content is so rich and fascinating that those cut scenes would even add more to the extended version. As it is, Downfall is one of the best World War II films out there, and all this extra content deserves to be seen. Thanks for listening.